This tape is part of a 12-part series designed to help nursery sales personnel answer customer questions. These tapes are not designed to be all-inclusive, but instead are to be used in conjunction with printed supplemental materials. This program is a joint educational effort between the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service and the Texas Agricultural Extension Service. As a result, some of the timings for certain practices may vary. To get the correct dates for your location, please consult the printed materials that accompany this series. If you have additional questions, please contact your local extension office.
I'm Sue Gray. Welcome to the first in our 12-part series designed to help you help your customer. Our approach is to provide you a monthly videotape that's an update of current solutions to seasonal lawn and garden problems. Our approach during this series is using integrated pest management, or IPM for short. IPM is a method of combining good cultural practices with common sense pest control to grow great lawns and gardens using a minimum of pesticides. In this first program, we're going to highlight winter sprays, pruning of shade trees and ornamentals, soil testing, and lawn rejuvenation.
Questions? Ask the plant detective.
This time of year, as customers come into your stores and start seeing all the colorful seed packets, they get cabin fever, and they may be anxious to start a vegetable garden. We want to give you a few tips to pass on to them so they'll have a successful garden in this tough gardening climate. The first thing, of course, is to choose varieties that are recommended for either Texas and Oklahoma. Both universities have done extensive research on varieties that are adapted to our climate. So refer to those fact sheets and make sure you carry the types that they need to have a successful garden. Second of all, recommend that they choose a site that's out in full sun, gets at least 8 hours a day of full sun, especially for tomatoes, peppers, and other fruiting crops. It helps for earliness of cropping if the site tilts a little bit towards the south, but that's not absolutely necessary. Drainage is very important, however, and if it's a garden that's in heavy clay soil, you might recommend that they hill up their planting rows a little bit to enhance drainage. Now, if they're a beginning vegetable gardener, you'll really help them a great deal if you'll encourage them to stay small their first year. Prepare an area that's maybe only 10 feet by 10 feet. That's 100 square feet. Very manageable for 1 or 2 people for a small vegetable gardening area, and it will help them with their managing weed control the first year as well. If they're a beginning gardener and don't know how to start out, recommend that they work in at least a 2-inch layer of organic matter both in spring and again in fall to help enrich the soil. Vegetables like a very loose, friable soil. It also helps if they have the right tools, and if they're just a beginning gardener, really the only 2 things they need are a spading fork. It's also called a potato fork. They can use that to turn the soil and loosen it, because if they're just starting out, they don't need a full-scale rototiller. And they might also want a steel rake. This can be used to level the area and smooth out any clods and get the bed ready for seeding. Last of all, hold those homeowners back and encourage them to not plant until we're past our frost-free dates.
It's very important that your customers understand the type of soil that they have. Soil tests are very important. It's important to know what the pH of the soil is in order to be able to determine what types of plants that you can grow in an area. Our soil tests can be done either at private labs or contact your local county extension service, and they can do this for you as well. I'm standing among a lot of acid-loving plants here. This is a camellia, and these are azaleas here. and they require a tremendous amount of acidity. Some people choose to try to grow these in alkaline soils, and if you're one of those people that want to try to do that, you can urge your customers to please prepare the soil properly. That's done with a lot of organic matter, a lot of peat moss. Also, the beds need to be raised in order to have good drainage in these areas. Now, if for the alkaline areas, there's a lot of plants that will grow in those as well. And we're going to take a look at some trees that you can grow in alkaline areas. Well, we've seen some of the acid plants that we can grow in the acid soils. Now it's time for us to take a look at some of the plants that we can grow in the alkaline soils. As you look behind me, these are many, many plants around me that will grow in the alkaline soils, and I would encourage your customers to grow the plants that are appropriate for the pH of their soil. These are some hollies. These are Nellie R. Stevens hollies, and they grow very well, as do most of the hollies, in alkaline soils. Over here you'll see some Yopon hollies and a Deodora cedar. Many of the cedars and the hollies do well. Over here you'll see some Photinias. These do very well in alkaline soils. As you can see, these are quite large, and they'll adapt very well to the surroundings. Make sure that your customers understand the importance of pH and how plants can adapt to particular soil types.
Oak wilt is a fungal disease that can kill oak trees. Susceptible trees should not be pruned from January through June because that's when the disease is most commonly spread by sap-feeding beetles. They carry the fungus from diseased trees to pruning wounds on healthy trees.
While your customers probably aren't thinking about diseases and insects in the middle of the winter, that's actually a good time to encourage them to do some preventive type sprays. One of the things they can do is to put dormant oils on to avoid some insect problems, and there are some fungicides that they can use to prevent problems like peach leaf curl and oak leaf blister. Also, they can put on some of the copper hydroxide type sprays to help prevent some of bacterial diseases like fire blight. The best time to put these sprays on, especially if you're dealing with peach leaf curl and oak leaf blister, is the first time is in the fall, about the time the leaves are mostly off the tree, is to apply things like Daconil. And that will help to prevent that fungal disease in the spring. The second time to put them on is right in the early spring, before the trees have actually budded out. You need to put these products on in the spring or before bud break because they can cause severe damage to the tree if they're put on after the leaves have come out. So I would encourage your customers to do that kind of thing, do some sanitation pruning in the winter months when it's not so hard to do that kind of hard labor.
It's January, and after 14 years of experience of working in the lawn care industry, I know that the first day we have in January where it's nice and warm, you're going to have homeowners coming into your stores wanting to buy something to put on the lawn. Usually it's going to be a pre-emergent herbicide or maybe a post-emergent herbicide for the winter weeds that are in the lawn. The thing you need to understand that it's too early in the spring to be doing weed control work. When the weather's below 55, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, your post-emergent herbicides are not going to effectively control the weeds. The problem with this is if you spray them now, they're not going to work, then you're going to have to come back later and reapply the herbicide. This is going to cost the homeowners extra money, but more importantly, it's going to be putting pesticides out in the environment when we don't need to have them out there. It means we'll use excess pesticide. It's too early for our pre-emergent herbicides at this time of the year. What's going to happen is these will last about 120 days. And if you put them out in January, the herbicide is going to break down before the weeds stop germinating in the springtime or the summertime. You really need to wait until February, early March to put out your pre-emergent for your summer annual weeds such as crabgrass. So let the customers know that you'll be glad to help them when it's time, but right now it's too early to putting out herbicides, pre-emergents, post-emergents for weed control. Also, it's too early to be fertilizing. Your warm season grasses such as Bermuda grass and zoysia and San Augustine, these type of grasses are going to start growing about late March to mid-April. We don't need to fertilize them until they're ready to grow. If you put fertilizers out now, what's going to happen is since the plants are not actively taking the nutrients into the root system, when we have rain, you're going to get these materials leached down into the groundwater. What we've got to do is try and prevent not only pesticides, but we also want to prevent nutrients such as nitrogen from getting into our waterway. So let's don't sell fertilizer, let's don't be putting fertilizers out until sometime in late March, early May, when the grass is really needed. A lot of your customers may have a tall fescue lawn, which is a cool season grass. Now these lawns do need to be fertilized in early to mid-February. So if you have a customer that has one of these type of lawns, you can sell them a fertilizer to put out and help the grass grow and get ready for late spring and early summer growth. Let's do it right. Let's sell them what they need. Let's don't sell them what they don't need. And in summary, what we need to remember is January is too early for herbicides, both pre-emergent and post-emergent, and it's also too early for fertilizers. Let's wait until the right time to put these materials out so they'll be most effective.
Mulching is very important, as you can see here in this bed. It's used in the garden centers to help insulate plants. This time of the year when it's cold, it's very important to keep the roots of the plants from freezing. And this is one way to do it. Also, during the summer, it helps to keep the plants from being too hot, and it saves the root system of the plants then as well. One of the things that mulch also helps you with is it reduces the amount of water. So when you're watering during the winter, you don't need as much water. Also, it will help to prevent the weeds coming up between the rows in your nurseries. So if you mulch well, you won't have nearly the problem with weeds in the future.
This time of year, we can go from a beautiful sunny day to an icy, nasty day in 24 hours. There's lots of things that you can tell your clients to do in their yard for their plants that are very important during these winter months. A mulch is the best idea around the roots. This is a heavy decorative mulch. It's pine bark mulch. It does okay, but better would be a thinner, more porous mulch with smaller pieces. The reason for that is they allow more water flow, and in the heavy soils that we have in certain parts of the area, that's very important because too much water staying around the roots causes rot. Another good thing that they need to do is cover their plants with a porous material such as this remay. It floats above the plants, allows wind and airflow come through, it allows sunlight, and it allows moisture to come through. Plastic is a bad idea because not only does it lean up against the plants and cause problems with moisture against the leaves being trapped, but if a day like today comes out and they have plastic over their plants, they'll bake them. Or if it freezes, the plastic will freeze up against the leaves and really damage the plant. So it's a better idea to have a porous cover. Another idea is to have your client cut their plants back, especially perennials. They appreciate being cut back. It makes them come back better the next year and bloom better the next year. They need to use sharp clippers when they do that, not break the limbs off. Also, they need to keep their plants moist during the winter time.
Most of you are familiar with how heavy a canopy is on a live oak tree. But if you'll look at this tree has been very nicely pruned. They've gone up into the inner side of the tree and removed some of the branching. What this does is it reduces the amount of risk to the tree when we have ice storms. When we have ice storms in this area, in our areas, the ice forms in the outside edges. It can break the limbs away from the tree, causing a tremendous amount of damage to the tree. When you reduce the limbs, you reduce the risk of damage and a lot less cost for the homeowners. Another thing that will happen is it will allow grass to grow at the base of the tree, allowing a more beautiful lawn for the homeowners.
Well, that's our program for January. We hope you can make good use of the information we've just provided. And keep in mind, if you have any more questions, feel free to call your local Extension Service office. We want to thank you for joining us in this series and give you a brief look at February's topics. We'll be covering proper planting techniques for ornamental trees and shrubs, fire ant control, and controlling roaches inside the home.
This time of year, we can go from a beautiful sunny day like today to a horrible, icy, windy, rainy day in 24 hours. There's lots of things that need to be done for plants during the winter months. They don't need to just sit there and have no, I messed up. GP.
There's a reason for that. When you prune live oaks, you go up into the canopy and you reduce some of the canopy for the reason of reducing freeze damage. In the heavy, when you have a heavy canopy,
After that, we'll have what we call quick tips, sorry. Combining sound cultural practices with sensible pest control. Sorry.